Welcome to Talking Trade. I'm Sandi Siegel, president of Emmy Day. It's a pleasure today to welcome our guest, Dr. John Gatto. And John is the founder and managing director of Transatlantic Strategy Group, an international business and government relations firm here, located here in Milwaukee. And John holds a doctorate of law from both the U.S. and Germany. So, welcome, John. Welcome to Talking Trade.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. So I read a little bit more about you on LinkedIn and elsewhere, and was fascinated by your background and the business. As I understand, Transatlantic Strategy Group helps companies and governments both navigate European and U.S. business and global markets with bridging entry to the business, legal issues, and managing the government landscapes and barrier to entries and things like that with your expertise, of course, in international law and trade. So before we get into some of the deep dives on what's going on in trade, tell us just a little bit more about your business. I'm fascinated by what
Sure.
exactly you do and how you help people.
Sure. I'm just simply with my business Transatlantic Strategy Group, I'm simply leveraging my 2 decades of international law, public policy, diplomacy, and business experience, having worked both for U.S. government and German government and an industry alike. I've been able to enjoy perspectives from industry and from government as they relate to doing business, so I've specialized based on my experience on doing business where government and industry connect and interact. And we're finding ourselves in a very unique situation these days, more so than 5 years ago, even as you discuss on this show all the time. Everybody knows about tariffs. Everybody knows, about trade agreements, but it's so much more multifaceted, and it goes so much more deeper into the fabric of politics, geopolitics, relationships, transatlantic relations than is publicly noted on TV all the time. And that's really the intersection where I engage in. People ask me about tariffs all the time. We actually do help clients with tariffs, but we hand that off to those who are actually the real experts. And I was fascinated to see how many people turned out to be experts in tariffs about 9 months ago.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad to see they're there to help us. But my expertise and the strength of my firm is to help companies navigate the regulatory and market frameworks both in the U.S. and Europe.
Okay, fascinating. So one of the things I read on that you posted on LinkedIn was talking about Germany's newly agreed 2026 budget and how there's a 1 trillion euro set aside in special funds for defense and infrastructure, and a focus of locally made source goods, as there are with many countries in their strategies to, look inward and boost their economy by supporting locals. And yet you spoke to how that's a huge opportunities for U.S. companies, in spite of that. So explain a little bit more on your thinking and how, again, that speaks to that geopolitical,
Sure.
relationships and breaking those barriers and even with a focus such as, Germany has.
Sure. I'm glad you bring up defense and infrastructure because that's really, as it relates to Europe, it's really a relatively new notion because I grew up in Germany, lived here in Wisconsin now for the last 20 years. I spent 50-50 of my time here and in Europe. So I'm very in tune with not only what goes on in one or the other country, but I'm really in tune also with the dynamics of the transatlantic relationship in of itself. And many of us will probably remember the fateful meeting in the White House in February when Ukrainian President Zelensky was there and was unceremoniously dismissed from that meeting. And I was actually in a plane on my way to Germany. That it was that Friday evening. And when I got to Germany, the first thing Monday morning is a brand new German chancellor said to his voters that he did campaign on no more debt, but given what happened in the White House the past Friday, we can no longer rely on the United States to be a trusted partner in NATO. So Germany, have to shore up our own defenses. By the way, which is something that was decades overdue, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as many in Germany and Europe are concerned. For too long did NATO rely on the United States to come to our defense over in Europe
Sure.
on the American dime. And that's really the only thing that shifted. There was a lot of outcry. Oh, President Trump said he's leaving NATO. We're defenseless. In no word did he ever say that. What he did say is NATO is very important. It continues to be one of the most critical organizations in the world, especially geopolitically speaking, as we watch developments in China, in the Middle East. So NATO is not going away. In fact, it's going to come out of this stronger, as far as I'm concerned, and based on what I hear in Europe as well. But what we're seeing now is, he treats everything like a golf club, a golf club, right? In golf clubs, you have membership fees. You have the same thing going on in NATO, and all President Trump said, everybody has to pay their fair share now. So
Okay.
out of that came an immediate turnaround politically in Germany. We are putting money behind defense, which has historically never really been there. There was a defense budget, but it was very, very, very small. All of a sudden, within one fell swoop, we have €1 trillion in additional defense spending in Germany alone. That's only Germany, one of several NATO countries. 1 trillion extra spending in addition to the 500 billion that's in the annual defense budget. 3 hours later, I heard the European Union President Ursula von der Leyen say the same thing. We can no longer rely on the United States to be a trusted partner in NATO. We have to shore up our own defenses. And she put, I think it was 870 billion euros on the table for defense only. So that's where this new opportunity comes from. There's almost 2 trillion euros in new defense spending over there, but Germany, France, and all the other NATO countries don't in of themselves have the capabilities, technologically speaking even, or from a manufacturing capability to fulfill the new need of defense rearmament that is being funded. The funds are there, but the capabilities are not really there. And that's where I identified tremendous opportunity for US-based companies. And it could be OEMs. We have some here in Wisconsin, in Oshkosh Defense, for example,
Yeah.
that I work with. It's the big ones like Lockheed and Boeing, but also very, very small companies here in Wisconsin and elsewhere that are simply suppliers of electrical harnesses or
Yes.
valves or stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I've defined and identified a niche for U.S. companies that want to participate in that historic defense and infrastructure spending in Europe, and basically introducing them through my connections there and through my experience to those opportunities, help them navigate the political, the regulatory framework, and that's where we find ourselves today.
Yeah.
That's why the focus on defense and infrastructure these days.
Okay. And that is, as you say, it's important market for Wisconsin exporters. So it's one of the things that got my attention. But that's fascinating and understanding, that shift. And I love your analogy on the golf club membership. So I may have to borrow that. But so with all this trade policy volatility, and some of the the strategy changes, if you will, or the way, we're perceived by our European partners, which, I've seen myself as I've traveled. Um, I- is it changing, firms and how they evaluate working, US and Europe and, how they approach those operations or, trying to do trade? Are they more resistant or, as you're working with customers and helping them navigate, the challenges, but again, is there, concerns in a different way than there perhaps were prior, a few years ago?
Definitely, definitely. The political volatility across the Atlantic and globally, actually, is definitely shaping business decisions, investment decisions. Companies that, for example, have historically manufactured just in time are now switching to a policy that focuses more on just in case. That actually originally
Sure.
came out of COVID, where companies had to, stock much more significantly deep inventory in certain products than they would have originally. Uh, and they kind of kept that policy from the COVID days. Uh, Many people are now focusing on supply chain resilience,
Yes.
diversifying their supply chain, which also plays into my business, helping U.S. companies in the defense and infrastructure industry, because the defense industry has historically been a very well established and settled marketplace, but there's so much more opportunity for new players now because everybody who already has suppliers is diversifying their supply chain and making sure uh, the supply chain is resilient in case something happens to one or two of the other suppliers. So there's a lot of that going on. There's still tremendous opportunity, but investors are much more cautious now and much more risk assessing and much more long-term thinking than they used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly something we're seeing, and for obvious reasons. Again, with your focus in Europe and experience in Europe, can you comment on any the common, mistakes or issues that you see U.S. companies might make going into European markets, in how they
Sure,
approach the legal, cultural, and
sure.
political sides of it? Yeah.
Sure. Defense is a little bit different because it's a highly regulated market. But those of us who've also worked in medtech and consumer goods and those sorts of things, a common mistake that American companies do when they look at the European market is that they underestimate the fact that it's a very fragmented and differentiated market. It's not one a common marketplace as the United States is. It is, after all, at least no, the European Union uh, and, and Europe as a whole is still consists of a number of different countries with different regulatory frameworks, different languages, different cultures, different ways of doing business. So that's something companies still underestimate a little bit. And reversely, European companies coming to the States make exactly the opposite mistake. They look at the United States as one big marketplace and don't realize that it is in fact actually a very fractured and fragmented marketplace as well when it comes to policy and those sorts of things. So those are two high level things that are going on. When you look at the defense industry, for example, being as regulated as it is, uh, everybody always complains that we're trying to protect our marketplace here with Make them in America. But European Union has the same requirements. So in the defense industry, if let's say a U.S. OEM for small to mid-size tactical vehicles wants to sell to the German military, they have to comply with certain make local rules that exist in Germany as well.
Yeah.
So a company that makes these vehicles here can't just sell over there. Now they have to show that a certain amount of their product is made in Germany. So part of my work has been to identify local partners in Germany for the U.S. OEMs to form strategic alliances, share manufacturing capabilities, and thus addressing the make local rules.
Right,
And
right,
by the way, not only are you helping the U.S. company now access the German and European, the NATO defense industry market, but you're also helping that German partner provide better access to the U.S.
right.
marketplace through this new strategic alliance. So a very, very central piece of my work is finding, identifying partners and bringing about
Bringing them
strategic
together.
alliances. Mhm.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Yeah, win and certainly a win-win for, both countries and businesses. So looking ahead and where we are today, I like to think things have calmed down just a little bit since the beginning of this year as the year is coming to an end. What practical advice would you give to, mid-size exporters, particularly here in the Midwest, if they're looking to tap into that European market?
Sure.
Over the next period of time.
Sure. Well, every industry is going to be different in certain regards. Some are more regulated, some are not. But by and large, I think there's huge opportunity in Europe still today for American companies in all kinds of different industry segments. I think the key is, and I think we've always said it, but the key continues to be, and maybe even more so today, given the political shifts and uncertainties that we're faced with today, more so than 5 years ago, is just to do your homework. Don't
Yes.
go at it unprepared. Uh, f- Europe's companies, Europe's economies, they reward patience and resilience and forward-looking preparedness. Find local partners very, very soon. That builds trust, that builds reliability over there. Nobody expects you to be a native speaker in their language, but when you go travel over there, learn two or three phrases in German and French or whatever the language is. That goes a long, long way in building likability and trust. I would also tell, I have a very, very good familiarity with the Wisconsin ecosystem, so I would tell the Wisconsin manufacturer who is not all that experienced in exporting yet, take advantage of your local resources. Talk to your state economic development corporation. Talk to chambers of commerce. Talk to experts like yourself to help
Yeah.
with understand. You have to understand what you're getting into before you go, and do your homework before. I've always said, hire lawyers are expensive, accountants are expensive, but it's really an investment. You have to look at it.
Yes.
If you just
Yes.
want to sell a product for one sales cycle, you don't need to do all this. But if you want to be successful in that
Right.
marketplace in the long run, do your homework right away. Invest in the lawyers. Invest in the tariffs experts, and invest in the
Yes.
experts,
Yes.
and be ready to go at it right away before you go into the market, and not
Right.
try to fix expensive problems after you've made mistakes.
Yes. Right. Well, I couldn't agree more. And I would argue even a single shipment, do your homework because, a one shipment gone sideways can be very expensive
That's
mistake.
right.
And,
And nowadays
listen, learns.
documentation, export controls, there's so many sanctions out
Yes.
there. You
Yes.
have to know what you're getting into. You have to know who
Right.
you're shipping it to, where it's going to end up.
Yes.
Have to do your homework, otherwise you might be in trouble, more so than just
Yep.
commercial.
Yes, right. And the risk has never been greater,
Right.
given the volatility. And sounds like you're a great resource. And I'll just say, so appreciate you joining us today. And it's so refreshing to end the year, which is on a positive note and with opportunity in a year that has been delivering a lot of, less ideal news in the world of trade and in regards to opportunities. So really great learning more about you and chatting today. So thank you, Dr. John Gatto, for joining us today on Talking Trade.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
You've been listening to Talking Trade with Sandi Siegel and Ken Waslick, sponsored by the Wisconsin Center for Manufacturing and Productivity, Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin, Carroll University, and Michael Best Strategies.